Good morning, everyone. Hope you have been doing well. I had a great time yesterday watching the Blessing Fest with my family and friends, and I hope everyone else had a chance to enjoy it as well. Last week, we talked about divine interdependence, where we explored how God's energy is in everything and how important it is to create harmonious give and receive action in all of our relationships. Today, I wanted to explore one of life's most important topics to reflect on, and that is the purpose of life. Have you ever asked yourself what you're doing with your life, what you're doing with your life? I actually ask myself that question several times a year. And anytime I'm reflecting on my life, I usually ask. And, many of us may have had mentors in our life or a parent that was really guiding us. But not all of us have that kind of support. So, how would you go about finding direction or figuring out the purpose of your life? Maybe trial and error, or maybe there's a manual somewhere. Well, one source that might be good to consider is our Creator God. Let's take a look. Why did God create? Let's read. It is recorded in the Bible that after God completed each day of creation, he saw that it was good. This suggests that God wanted his creations to be object partners embodying goodness, that he might take delight in them. So basically, God wants us to be good. Seems obvious, but let's continue. God created human beings as the final step in creating the universe. He created them in his image, in the likeness of his internal nature and external form, and gave them sensibility to all feelings and emotions because it was his intention to share joy with them. Okay, so here it's saying that humans were God's final and ultimate creation. So he created everything, but ultimately it was humans that was the kind of the peak or the best creation. And I mean, one way to understand that is that in the Bible, it also says that God created us, human beings, in his image. So really, that's kind of high honors there. Humans were created in the image of God. But this final point is really interesting to me. God gave us feelings because he wanted to experience joy with us. It's intriguing, right? It's like God gave us feelings because he wanted us to enjoy the creation and everything together with us. So we're going to go into that a little bit more. So how does God experience joy with us? Since that's kind of the main point, he said he wanted to create to take delight. That was why he created. He wanted to experience joy. The question is, how does God experience joy with us? Let's read. Joy is not produced by an individual alone. Joy arises when we have an object partner in which our internal nature and external form are reflected and developed. Our object partner helps us to feel our own internal nature and external form through the stimulation it gives. So this is one of my most favorite principles to understand. So according to this, joy is something that kind of arises when you interact with an object partner that reflects our own nature and you see it developing. So one thing that this reminds me of is my love of role-playing games. I remember growing up in elementary school, one of my favorites in Nintendo was Dragon Warrior. And then later on, it became Final Fantasy VII. That was a classic. But the cool thing about the role-playing games is that in the video game, you're the main character. And as the character develops, fights the beasts and wins, you're able to gain money, increased hit points, magic points, better equipment, and you see your character growing in the game. And so there's this tremendous joy that comes from seeing your your character grow in strength and ability and so on and so forth. So this is kind of a great example of how the function of joy works, is that it's when your nature is reflected in an object and you see it developing, it brings joy. Now, I remember later on, the challenge with video games is that it's not real life. So, I mean, these days those lines are blurring. But anyway, the point is that didn't make my wife happy when I was spending too much time playing video games. So later on, I remember developing a whole goal setting process to kind of take what I loved about video games and apply it to real life. In one sense, I found a way to gamify life as the game of life in a way where you can continue to grow and achieve and measure your own progress in that process. So through that, I remember whenever I saw and empowered other people to go through this process and win their victories and achieve their goals, it was so enjoyable for me to see that. So I want to make a point here that joy is different than happiness. Happiness is gained whenever a desire is fulfilled. So, for example, I'm craving cake, chocolate cake, and I eat it. My desire is fulfilled, hence I am satisfied, or I'm happy. Or maybe I've been looking for getting that game and I buy it and I get it. Or I'm looking for a raise and I achieve it. Anytime a desire is fulfilled, then you can experience happiness. The problem is that happiness tends to be short-lived. Now, joy is something slightly different. It's more long-lasting and wholesome. I'm going to reread this passage one more time. Joy is not produced by an individual alone. Joy arises when we have an object partner in which our internal nature and external form are reflected and developed. Our object partner helps us feel our own internal nature and external form through the stimulation it gives. So joy is really a relationship with a partner that really reflects our nature, and that's what brings us joy. So in essence, that's what God wanted to do, was to experience joy through seeing his own nature reflected in each of us and seeing us develop. So whenever we as human beings reflect God's goodness, then that's what brings God joy. So to help us do exactly that, he gave us some clear instructions. So let's take a look at that. After their creation, God blessed Adam and Eve. Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. This is from Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. These are the three great blessings: to be fruitful, mature and ready to bear fruit, multiply, and have dominion over the creation. So God gave us three instructions to guide us in growing through these great blessings, which in one sense are three levels of resemblance to God. Let's take a closer look at each one of these three great blessings and what it looks like to fulfill each of them. So the first blessing is about the perfection of your individual character. Let's read. The key to God's first blessing is the perfection of individual character. Such individuals become the temples of God, achieve complete oneness with him, and acquire a divine nature. They experience the heart of God as if it were their own. Accordingly, when people realize God's first blessing, they become God's beloved who inspire him with joy. So according to the principle, the first blessing, when you fulfill it, you become one with God. You acquire this divine nature, and you're able to really feel God's heart as your own. Naturally, you become beloved by God and you're able to inspire God. It's quite a standard there. I remember growing up, I did learn this principle early on, and I remember being optimistic and actually planning to be perfect by age 21. And in fact, I put a whole plan together, and I was working towards it, working hard towards that, and I felt pretty good actually going into it that I was able to get there, at least before the next stage, which was getting blessed in marriage. But I realized very soon after my marriage blessing that there's still several levels of perfection that I can continue to grow into. It was almost like a new level that was unlocked, that I had more to develop. Now, the second blessing is about loving oneness as husband and wife and in the family. Let's read. Adam and Eve should have joined in loving oneness as husband and wife and raised children. This would have been the fulfillment of the second blessing. When God's second blessing is fulfilled, this family or community also becomes a good object partner, giving joy to God. So the second blessing is all about learning to love your spouse and then raising a family in loving oneness. That naturally expands to loving the community, society, and eventually the world. So, yeah, I remember this was something that I also had to learn. One deep insight that I remember gaining when we were preparing for our wedding was that love is actually something that is very substantial, and it's actually almost the purpose of having faith in the first place. I grew up really being learning like certain religious practices and prayer and devotion and different things that help me really practice a certain kind of lifestyle. But not everyone has that growing up. And I remember sometimes becoming almost judgmental towards others, towards even my wife, because they didn't have the same kind of religious rigor, I would say. But I remember at one point realizing that more than the religious practices, in fact, the whole purpose of religious practice is to be able to manifest God's love in relationships. And so that was a really valuable insight where I realized, if I truly love my wife, then it should be unconditional in one sense, not based on how she behaves or who she is or whatnot, but really loving her from God's viewpoint. Anyway, it's an ongoing thing, as we all know, but I thought that was a really valuable insight. And also when it comes to kids, that's a whole nother level. In the second blessing, it's about creating harmony in your family. And I remember when I first became a parent, everyone experiences the sleepless nights, having to get up throughout the night, through with your baby like screaming at the top of their lungs because they're hungry or they poo themselves. So we learn this as parents to still give, to still love, even though our sleep is deprived. There's not much love back in return. We continue to invest in love. And we thought that was hard. Wait till your kids grow up, right? Elementary school and teenage years. It's a continual growth and development of your heart as a parent in loving your children. And I think that's the whole point of the second blessing, is that we're continually learning to expand our heart. learning to love unconditionally despite the different challenges that come up in those relationships. Now, we might think that it's so hard to, dealing with our own kids. Imagine how God feels working with us, right? How frustrated God must be sometimes when we don't listen or when we don't pay attention, when we don't respond to what we know God is wanting us to do. So this second blessing is really a great place to continue to grow our hearts and our ability to love others. And the more we do that, the more we begin to resemble God and thus bring God joy. Okay, let's go to the third blessing. This is all about being one with creation. Let's read. A human being contains within himself the sum total of the essences of all things. This is the reason he is called the microcosm of the cosmos. Sensing their own internal nature and external form displayed throughout the creation, they feel immense joy. So the principle says that humans contain the essence of all things and therefore can experience joy through engaging with nature. See, one of my God languages is spending time in nature. I'm sure for many others that's the same, but I find a lot of pleasure and joy in just seeing the grandness of nature. I remember like just being in the middle of a typhoon or watching a completely starry night. Those are the kind of things that really, or being in the middle of the ocean, that really helps me feel this divineness of nature. Let's continue to read. God also delights when creation, becomes his third object partner through the harmonious union of human beings and the natural world. When human beings realize God's third blessing, the entire universe becomes yet another good object partner, giving joy to God. We call this world the kingdom of heaven on earth. So basically, God loves it when we enjoy our time with nature. This is, in one sense, the reason why God created creation in the first place, was so that we can enjoy. It's almost like when a parent buys toys for their kids, or prepare the whole environment for the child. It's so that the child can grow up healthy, strong, and enjoying their life. That's why the parents prepare all those things for their children. Same thing. God created this whole universe so that we can explore it and enjoy it and grow through it. And in one sense, God can only experience the joy of all of this creation through us enjoying it. For example, I remember one time I bought, it was when they were still a bit younger, but I went to Cracker Barrel. I was traveling quite a bit, and it's been a while since seeing my family, so I decided to buy a toy for my kids. And I remember buying this huge box. It was like this big box of Nerds. And I remember revealing it out of this big bag to my son. And his eyes became so big and he was so excited. And of course, my mom was like, or they're like, why are you buying so much candy for your kids? But to see the reaction of my son was totally worth it. And then I remember pulling out a huge pink pony for my daughter, and she was overjoyed as well. And I just felt like, those things in and of themselves, the box of Nerds, the big box of Nerds, the pink pony, they're not so enjoyable for me personally. But it's so enjoyable to see my kids enjoying it. So that's kind of how it's like with God and creation in us, is that yes, he created these amazing things, but the creation itself doesn't fulfill its full value until we as human beings fully enjoy nature. So, I already mentioned this, but when I went fishing in the ocean in Kodiak, Alaska, it's so amazing. Or I remember one time, me and my wife, we were in Hawaii, and it was in the middle of the island, the big island, at the middle of the night, and really it was like 360 degrees almost. It was all sky and stars, and how beautiful it was. And it was so exciting to see my wife excited to see the stars, and I really felt like, wow, that's so amazing that God created this for us to enjoy. Okay, so we can see how, fulfilling these three great blessings bring us joy. It also brings God joy. It seems pretty simple and straightforward, right? First blessing, individual maturity. Second blessing, create a nice family. Third blessing, be nice with creation and enjoy creation. But it's not so simple. So to help us, I wanted to just go into one quick final topic, which is how do we best fulfill these three great blessings? Let's read. All entities have dual purposes, for the sake of the whole and for the sake of the individual. In God's ideal, there cannot be any individual purpose which does not support the whole purpose, nor can there be any whole purpose that does not guarantee the interests of the individual. The infinite variety of beings in the universe form one vast organic body interwoven by these dual purposes. Actually, what comes to mind is the complex ecosystems in nature, right? There's always this complex dynamic between how one entity serves another, and then there's, it's mutual and beneficial. And when you mess around with that ecosystem, it affects the whole system. So, and the same thing for us. When we pursue these three great blessings, we need to remember these dual purposes. There is a whole purpose and there's an individual purpose. Both of them have to be in harmony. Again, this is the ideal, but they need to be in harmony in order for us to really function at our best. Now, the challenge is many times people think only of themselves, sometimes at the sacrifice or expense of others, right? And it's, especially in this culture, sometimes it's the me first movement, or sorry, that's not, yeah, anyway, just it's about me, right? Show me the money. It's all about being number one or taking care of number one. But when you do that, then again, you're out of balance. You have to always remember the whole purpose in order to be in harmony. Now, for our community especially, I think the opposite is also true, where if we focus too much on the whole purpose, or rather we focus on the whole purpose at the expense or neglect of the individual purpose, then that's also not healthy and not according to God's original ideal. So for example, I remember one time I was working so hard in my missionary training work, I was losing sleep, and I got into a car accident. And of course, I was being gung-ho, I was doing God's will and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't taking care of my own body. And so my body shut down, and it affected my ability to serve the public purpose as well, right? So some of us, we have to be careful that we might pursue our work or mission so much that we neglect ourselves, or even in relationships, right? That we pursue our mission, that we might neglect our spouse or our kids. Again, maybe in a certain time period that was necessary, but according to God's original ideal, we need to be conscious of always having both the individual and whole purpose in balance. So yeah, let's make sure to do that so that we can really continue to strive towards this ideal and to pursue these three great blessings in a way that is sustainable. Let's go into the final passage for today. The three great blessings are fulfilled when the whole creation, including human beings, completes the four-position foundation with God as a center. We talked about the four-position foundation before, God at the center, and then a dual, like a husband, wife, or mind and body, and then a union, right? So again, the three great blessings are fulfilled when the whole creation, including human beings, completes the four-position foundation with God as the center. This is the kingdom of heaven, where ultimate goodness is realized and God feels the greatest joy. This is, in fact, the very purpose for which God created the universe. So in summary, God created for the purpose of goodness and to experience joy. How both God and us experience joy is through fulfilling these three great blessings: to be fruitful, maturing ourselves, to multiply, having a family, and having dominion over all of creation. And the key to fulfilling the three great blessings is to seek the greater purpose as well as the individual purpose in all relationships. You know, the kingdom of heaven on earth is not just a fairy tale for believers. There is a plan. And in my opinion, it's a pretty darn good plan. If we can just follow the plan of resembling God's goodness individually, again, first within ourselves, within our mind, body, our conscience, and God, and then resembling that goodness and balance and harmony with our family, between myself, my wife, me and my kids, expanding to the community society, and finally to experience the kingdom, this creation, like to enjoy all of creation with God in mind, with appreciation to God. We will be able to experience this kingdom of heaven on earth in our lifetime. So let's keep that in mind as we go into our holiday season with our families. I hope everyone will have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and may God bless you and your family this week.